Throughout his career, when questioned about his use of black stereotypes and the overtly religious themes present in all of his work, Tyler Perry told several reporters that black people don't go to therapy, they go to church. Perry's ideology is widely accepted by much of the black community as fact. Many members of the African American and Afro-Caribbean American communities understand mental illness as personal business that one must discuss with God, not doctors. Tarell Alvin McCraney's 2008 play In the Red and Brown Water is an honest depiction of madness in these communities. In the Red and Brown Water illustrates the ways and reasons that mental illness may manifest, as well as a plethora of images showcasing how members of these communities may neglect their sickness in order to maintain their place in society. Hi, I'm Reva, and today we're going to talk about how Tarell Alvin McCraney's brilliant play In the Red and Brown Water is an excellent depiction of what mental health looked like for the black community in the early to mid-2000s. Beware! There are spoilers. Content warnings will be listed below. Now, let's get into it. Black American mental illness stems as far back as the Atlantic slave trade. Probably farther. I'm not a historian. When the African and Caribbean slaves were taken from their homes and countries or traded as prisoners of war, many of their traditions were stifled. People from different tribes, regions, families, and ethnicities were forced together in order to stifle their sense of self and any attempts at communal revolution. Slave owners and plantation masters did not understand, nor did they care to learn, about the nuanced differences between communities. Over generations, this blatant rejection of one's identity, along with the back-breaking abuse, led the enslaved peoples to believe that they did not belong anywhere. Enslaved peoples developed feelings of displacement, longing for a nation and a family again, which lingered throughout time and still ills Black Americans today. In the Red and Brown Water depicts this separation from community in the prologue. The ensemble hums, sad and low, as they move downstage, but in the midst of their journey, Oya, our protagonist, a young, bright, talented black girl, is left behind. This movement seems to illustrate how the Black American journey from enslaved to reviled has resulted in individuals being separated from the family, the culture, and the community at large. Mental illness has historically been treated as a closet phenomenon. Mental illness is not a subject openly and candidly discussed among African Americans, says Dixon. Just as Oya lays in pain, alone and gossiped about in the prologue, Black Americans of the 2000s did not often talk about their struggles with mental health. Instead, they smiled and hurt in silence until silence was no longer an option. Although Dixon's study is nearly 20 years removed, we've failed to move the needle much in this regard. Even in 2024, it's not uncommon for Black families of struggling loved ones to suggest prayer, or remind them that hell, life's like that. You think sadness stops niggas from going to the fish market, as McCraney so beautifully put it. But we're talking about the 2000s now. Back then, depression, mental illness was largely equated to laziness rather than sickness by much of the general public. Now, Black adults are more likely than their white counterparts to seek professional treatment for their mental health issues. But, and there's a but, they experience longer wait times, are less likely to be admitted for treatment, or are met with overwhelmingly biased care when they do receive services. Black adults seeking treatment have been severely misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed, and thus find that medical professionals are not safe sources of support. This discovery can be correlated to the rise in suicides and drug overdoses of Black Americans in recent years. In order to protect themselves mentally, emotionally, and even physically, Black people often went out of their way to appear emotionless. For example, when Mama Moja dies, Oya weeps for her mother until she must be strong to support Alegba. McCraney writes, "Lo Legba, it's okay. I know," trying to comfort him and herself. "She ain't in no more pain." Slightly later, Alegba barks at Oya because she does not want to mourn her mother with him, murmuring about her lack of respect. This interaction alludes to the relationship between the Black individual and the family unit. Oya does not want to emote honestly with Alegba. Instead of being concerned about her well-being, he is insulted and offended. McCraney uses this moment brilliantly to draw a parallel to the plight of the contemporary Black American, especially women and femmes who find it is far more important to society to uplift the Black man or support the family unit rather than to prioritize their own well-being. Instead of doctors, many Black Americans find their healing in the church, due to the fact that church is mainly free, unlike medicine, and is centered around a kind of collectivism instead of the individualism American ideology maintains so lovingly. In The Red and Brown Water, Oya goes to the woman who reminds you, who all but tells Oya that she is infertile. Oya ventures away from the church for a solution to her problems. They won't even see I'm in trouble. They all say, "You young, and you ain't pregnant? Praise the Lord. Bless the Lord, oh my soul." Oya's rejection of the church diagnosis reflects the growth in Afro-Caribbean mental health studies that sprang up in the early and mid-2000s, when the American Journal of Public Health made groundbreaking strides in African-American and Caribbean-American immigrant health research. Instead of the church's theology, Oya and Black America venture to the woman who reminds you, who acts as a doctor. Although she does not have all the answers for Oya, the woman who reminds you provides a more grounded, logical analysis of Oya's problems than that of the opinionated, emotionally driven analysis on the part of the church. African Americans often search for healing, betterment, and security in other places as well, such as education, career, and interpersonal relationships, in an attempt to escape the displacement from family and self. These endeavors are exemplified in Oya and other characters throughout In the Red and Brown Water. Oya's devolution into madness begins when Mama Moja dies. Oya immediately finds refuge in Shango. Shango seems to understand her feelings of solitude because his own father died. Consequently, they seek family in one another. But once they start fighting, Oya looks for refuge that will take her away from home. Oya returns to the man from state in hopes of running for his college and getting out of the community she grew up in after turning down a scholarship opportunity in order to care for her dying mother at the beginning of the play. Unfortunately, the man from state does not have space for Oya anymore. He remarks, "Young people like yourself don't have much in the way of opportunity in this world." Many Black Americans understood that whiteness was the key to happiness and success, and McCraney reflects this belief on the parts of both Black and white Americans that one must have access to wealth, power, or education in order to be successful or even comfortable in America. But we know that wealth, power, and education have been systematically withheld from the Black community for generations. Oya remarks, "I ain't going to school no more. They ain't got no place for me. Nowhere for me to go but here. Here. I can't go nowhere. Just be here. Here." Even Oya understands her surroundings as a dead end. Thus, characters and people must find new ways to battle their personal and societal ills. Schizophrenia and other mental illnesses present themselves in a number of ways in the African American community. One may fall to drug use, self-harm, or unsafe sexual practices, but they also appear in the smallest things. For instance, Oya used to be an amazing runner, but after Mama Moja dies, she stops running and spends her time fooling around with Shango and doing other menial tasks. Aunt Ella asks, "You still running? That man from state said he gonna come on in a year, you ready?" To which Oya responds yes, while Shango truthfully states that she's lying. Small things like lying to loved ones, shirking responsibilities, and a new lack of interest in activities that were once enjoyable are all symptoms of depression. In addition to interpersonal changes, a person fighting depression, mania, or schizophrenia may deal with out-of-body experiences, where the ill person does not necessarily behave, respond, or feel like themselves. Instead, that person may experience the phenomena where it feels like their actions and thoughts are being motivated by someone or something outside of themselves. For example, Shun remarks that night before, Ogun woke up and saw Oya sitting on the porch rocking. You remember it was during the blackout. All the power was out in the projects. Anybody in their right mind would be inside, not sitting on their porch, but Oya say he don't know. Seemed like she losing her mind. Oya passively putting herself in harm's way is a form of self-harm. Think. If a friend of yours obviously saw cars speeding down a highway and attempted to cross the road without looking, without any fear of getting hit, you may find cause for concern. Sadly, the only one that finds any cause for alarm is Ogun Size, while the rest of the community snickers and points. Oya's smaller cries, like sitting out in the riot, were ignored, and she is continuously left alone to deal with her grief and pain. It is only when she takes action in a way that cannot be ignored, through blood and self-mutilation, in order to stop the pain, that the community at large acknowledges that she may need help. Often, it is only in hindsight that people see the warning signs of suicide, self-mutilation, or self-harm. Another way in which mental illness presents itself in the Black community is through drug abuse and unsafe sexual promiscuity. We love a hoe phase, but we're looking at something a bit different here. During the Reagan era, African American communities were flooded with crack cocaine. The introduction of this drug, as well as others throughout the years, provided a dangerous escape from the struggle and pain of being Black in America. Alegba exemplifies this struggle with his obsession with candy, sex, and parties. Oya demands, "What you stealing for, Alegba?" Alegba begs for candy money from Mama Moja and even steals candy from Little Rune, just as drug addicts sometimes beg for money on the streets in hopes of satisfying their cravings, or may be brought to borrowing or even theft in order to achieve their desired high. In addition to his candy addiction, Alegba gets a woman pregnant, which is an indication of his unsafe sexual practices. It should be noted here that the woman is a fully grown adult, and Alegba is only 16 at the time. Although the community within the play looks to Alegba as the problem, let's use our 2024 brains to understand that the blame should not be on this teenager. But in this dynamic, I want to look at how Alegba responds to the news and the consequences of his choices. Alegba gets kicked out of his mother's house, but he beams to Oya, proud of what he's done. Ultimately, though, he ponders, "We wrong, Oya? It ain't right to just be bringing babies in the world." Although Alegba can understand that his habits are detrimental to his, and perhaps others' well-being, he cannot help but feel fulfilled by his actions. The same is often seen in persons suffering from depression. Towards the end of Act 2, McCraney provides another peek into Alegba's escapism. Agungun inquires, "She know we friends? She want to be friends with us?" to Alegba at a party after the two men hug tight. Too tight to be just friends. Agungun's question implies that he and Alegba participate in group or experimental sex, which comes with its own dangers, which include but are not limited to sexually transmitted diseases and unplanned pregnancies. Many Black men experimented with the DL, or the down low lifestyle, between the early 90s and the mid 2000s. Homosexuality was extremely frowned upon in the Christianity-driven culture that African Americans thrived in. Consequently, Black men, young and old, went to nightclubs and parties to escape their fake lives and embrace their truths in safety. Sadly, the secret nature of this sexual climate led to a lack of testing and doctor's visits due to the shame associated with being a gay Black man at the time. Rapidly, the HIV/AIDS virus spread through the Black community, infecting not only the LGBTQ community, but their straight partners as well. Gay Black men were shamed and slandered by the African American community for being dirty and unholy, which only led to further feelings of self-loathing, self-doubt, and isolation. McCraney paints a postmodern world that looks and sounds oddly close to our own. In the Red and Brown Water tackles issues within and outside the minds and power of the Black community. Much like America in 2008, McCraney's play depicts a collection of characters who are persistently neglectful, insensitive, or too self-involved to identify mental illness in others, or combat it, as they struggle to identify, accept, and deal with their own. Sadly, the ill are left to self-medicate or self-regulate, just like Oya and Alegba. There is hope for a better future as stigma around queerness, mental illness, and addiction dissipate over time, and the general public gains a better understanding of these experiences. Today, in our Year of Our Lord 2024, there is better support within the community and outside of it, and we can be grateful for that, at least. I hope this snapshot of the early to mid 2000s helped you to better enjoy in the red and brown water and to better understand and connect with the people in your community. Maybe this will help you identify warning signs that would otherwise go unchecked. That's enough for me. Give someone a hug today. Tell them you love them. Ask them how they are, but I mean really ask them. You never know who you could help. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, consider sharing, liking, and subscribing to AAVE TV. But before you go, I want to know, have you read In the Red and Brown Water? Have you seen it? Did you grow up in the 2000s? Because I know I did. Or do you just like Tarell Alvin McCraney? Did I miss something? I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments below. And I'll catch you in the next one.